The last of the evening sunlight slanted through the gym's floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the weightlifting platforms. The golden hues of the setting sun painted the room in a warm, almost nostalgic glow, creating an atmosphere that felt both serene and melancholic. The shadows stretched longer and longer as if reluctant to let go of the day. Sweat-stained equipment gleamed under the industrial lighting. Each piece of machinery bore the marks of countless hours of dedication and hard work. The metallic surfaces, though polished, were etched with the fingerprints of determination and perseverance. The scent of rubber mats and disinfectant mingled with the lingering aroma of sweat, creating a unique olfactory signature of the gym. The air, thick with the scent of exertion and effort, hung heavy as the last few gym-goers finished their routines. Their faces, flushed with the exertion of their final sets, reflected a mixture of satisfaction and fatigue. The rhythmic clanking of weights being re-racked and the soft hum of treadmills winding down created a symphony of closure. The gym, once bustling with energy, now felt like a sanctuary of spent ambition. Among them, a woman lingered, seemingly oblivious to the closing time announcements echoing around the near-empty space. Her presence was a stark contrast to the dwindling crowd, as if she was in a world of her own. The repetitive chime of the closing announcements seemed to fade into the background, drowned out by her focus and determination. She was fit, her short dark hair hung just above her shoulders, her designer workout gear pristine against the worn leather of the weight bench. Her movements were precise and deliberate, each exercise executed with the grace of someone who had spent countless hours perfecting their form. The contrast between her immaculate appearance and the well-worn equipment around her was striking, a testament to her dedication and discipline. Her gaze swept the room, a flicker of annoyance crossing her features as she approached a figure wiping down a treadmill. The person, engrossed in their task, seemed unaware of her approach. She paused for a moment as if contemplating whether to interrupt before finally speaking. Her voice, though calm, carried an undertone of impatience, a subtle reminder that the gym was closing and it was time to leave. The interaction, brief and to the point, encapsulated the unspoken rules and rhythms of the gym, where time and effort were measured in reps and sets and every minute counted. "Excuse me," she said, her tone clipped, her eyes narrowing as she approached the man who was busy wiping down a treadmill. She had an air of authority, as if she was used to getting answers quickly and without any fuss. "Are you aware the gym is closed?" she continued, her voice carrying a note of impatience. The sign on the door clearly stated the gym's hours, and it was well past closing time. The man turned, a quiet strength in his demeanor. He didn't seem flustered by her abrupt approach. Instead, he finished wiping down the treadmill with deliberate care before turning to face her fully. He was tall, his dark skin gleaming with perspiration, evidence of a long day of hard work. His eyes were calm, almost serene as they met hers. His name, Jason Jones, embroidered in bold letters on his staff shirt, stood out clearly. It was a name that suggested reliability and professionalism. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, his voice calm and measured, "just finishing up here." There was no hint of annoyance or defensiveness in his tone, just a simple statement of fact. "I'll be locking up shortly," he added as he moved towards the gym doors, keys jangling softly at his side. His movements were efficient, practiced, as if he had done this 1,000 times before. The woman's gaze swept over him, taking in his attire, the way he carried himself. There was something about him that didn't quite fit her expectations. The keys dangling from his belt loop caught her eye, a small but significant detail that added to her growing curiosity. "You the cleaning crew?" she asked, her tone betraying a hint of disbelief. It was clear she had made up her mind about him, and it wasn't a flattering judgment. Jason paused, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his face before he replied, "No, ma'am, I own the place." His words were simple, but they carried a weight that made her pause. "No, ma'am, I own the place," he repeated, his voice steady and sure. There was no need for him to elaborate. The truth was plain and undeniable. The woman's eyebrows shot up, a disbelieving laugh escaping her lips. She looked around the gym as if expecting someone to jump out and reveal it was all a joke. "You own this gym?" she scoffed, her eyes scanning the space as if searching for a hidden camera. "Don't waste my time. Where's the manager?" Her voice was sharp, almost accusatory, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Jason stood firm, his expression unchanging. He had faced skepticism before, and he knew that actions spoke louder than words. He simply waited, letting the truth of his ownership settle in. The woman's expression continued to be of disbelief and skepticism. She took a step back, her eyes widening as she still refused to believe the truth of his words. Jason nodded slightly, a knowing smile playing at the corners of his mouth. He had seen this reaction before, and he knew it would take a moment for her to fully grasp the situation. "I'm sorry," she said finally, her voice softer now but still tinged with disbelief. "I didn't mean to assume," she trailed off, clearly unsure of how to proceed. "It's all right," Jason replied, his tone gentle and understanding. "It happens more often than you'd think." He offered her a reassuring smile, hoping to put her at ease. The woman nodded, still a look of disbelief remained over her face. "Thank you," she said, her tone sarcastic. "I appreciate your understanding." With that, they parted ways, still no newfound respect between them. The gym, once a place of mutual understanding, now felt like a space of confrontation and disrespect. Jason straightened, his initial amusement fading. He had been through countless interactions with members, but this one was different. The intensity in her eyes was unmistakable. As he met her gaze directly, he could sense the storm still brewing within her. It wasn't just about a simple misunderstanding, it was a clash of wills. "Ma'am, I assure you, I own this gym," he said, his voice calm but firm. He had built this place from the ground up, and every corner of it held a piece of his journey. He gestured towards the wall behind the reception desk, hoping to provide some tangible proof of his claim. There, his business license, framed and prominently displayed, hung. "My name's right there," he added, hoping to quell her doubts. The woman didn't even bother to look. Her eyes were fixed on him, filled with a mix of disbelief and frustration. "Cut the act!" she snapped, her voice slicing through the air like a knife. Her voice rising in irritation, she continued, "You expect me to believe that?" She crossed her arms, her posture radiating defiance. It was clear she wasn't going to back down easily. "Just get me someone who can actually help me," she demanded, her tone leaving no room for argument. "I need to discuss my membership," she added, her voice tinged with impatience. Jason took a deep breath, realizing this was going to be a long conversation. He had dealt with difficult customers before, but something about her unwavering stance made him pause. He knew he had to handle this delicately, balancing firmness with understanding. As he prepared to respond, he couldn't help but wonder what had led to this moment of incredulity and escalation. A tense silence descended, broken only by the rhythmic hum of the treadmills slowing to a stop. Jason's jaw tightened, the woman's blatant disbelief stinging more than he cared to admit. It wasn't the first time he'd encountered this kind of skepticism, this thinly veiled prejudice masquerading as disbelief. He'd built this gym from the ground up, poured his blood, sweat, and tears into every inch of it. Yet here he was, being mistaken for the cleaning crew in his own establishment. "Ma'am," he began, his voice dangerously calm, "I understand you might be surprised, but I assure you I own this gym." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, quickly pulling up a photo. "That's me, shaking hands with Mayor Thompson at the grand opening last year." He turned the screen towards her, the image undeniable. Jason, beaming, shaking hands with the city's mayor, a banner with the gym's name clearly visible in the background. The woman's face flushed, the color draining from her face as she stared at the photo. Her eyes darted around the gym, as if seeing it for the first time. The carefully curated artwork, the state-of-the-art equipment, the diverse clientele captured in the photos lining the walls, all suddenly clicked into place. The smug confidence that had clung to her moments ago evaporated, replaced by a mortified silence. She stammered, her voice barely a whisper. I apologize, I didn't." She trailed off, unable to meet Jason's gaze. The weight of her assumption, the sheer audacity of her disbelief hung heavy in the air between them. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable, before Jason finally spoke, his voice devoid of any trace of anger, just a weary resignation. "It's fine, ma'am. It happens." He turned away, busying himself with gathering the cleaning supplies, his movements automatic, practiced. But inside, a familiar anger simmered. How many times would he have to prove himself, justify his presence in a space he built with his own two hands? How many times would he be judged by the color of his skin, his success measured against the yardstick of preconceived notions? The question swirled in his mind, leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. The woman stood there for a moment longer, her initial bravado replaced by a shame-faced awkwardness. She mumbled another apology, her words lost in the vastness of the now empty gym. She wanted to explain, to take back her words, to bridge the chasm her assumptions had created. But there were no words, no amount of apologies that could erase the sting of that moment, the casual cruelty of her prejudice. She finally turned and walked towards the exit, her shoulders slumped, the weight of her actions heavy on her back. The automatic doors slid shut behind her, leaving Jason alone in the silence. He took a deep breath, the scent of disinfectant doing little to mask the bitter aftertaste of the encounter. He had a gym to close, a business to run. Life went on, but some scars, he knew, had a way of lingering long after the wounds had healed.